From Wall Street to Main Street to help small business owners have the same capital as corporate America and give them the same resources as a larger company. We cover business funding, business credit, scaling, business consulting, and much more. Check out the website at shieldadvisorygroup.com. Welcome to the show, The Liquid Lunch Project.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew Meehan, alongside my co-host and partner, the Professor, Luigi Rosa Bianca. What's going on today, Lou?
Matt, how are you, partner? You know, this episode I've been waiting for a while. You know, there's one topic that's near and dear to my heart, and it's fitness, especially when you can find a way to scale fitness and make money with it. You know, us Americans, we're always treating the symptoms and never the causality, right? So it's with pleasure today that we have Dan Zavorotny, who's co-founder of NutriSense, got to become an entrepreneur through an interesting route. He was a former consultant over at KPMG, so did go the standard corporate route, and now he's a swashbuckling Texan entrepreneur. So Dan, welcome to the Liquid Lunch Project, my friend.
Hey guys, I really appreciate you guys having me. This is an honor.
Thanks for being here.
Honors all hours, Dan. So come on, let's go dive right into the pool. How is it being a COO of a startup versus working for, you know, big brother in the corporate world?
Yeah, I mean, two different worlds, right? I think if we look at the corporate world, really what people do a lot of times is what I call micro optimizations. Well, they'll look at a big process and they'll take one tiny little portion and they'll spend a year or two trying to improve it. And the reason they do that is because, you know, you improve a tiny little process, and that improvement could be millions of dollars saved, right? In a startup, those things don't matter as much because the processes don't exist. So just building something from scratch, even if it's just okay, is already getting somewhere because you're going from 0 to 50 versus there you're going from 90 to 99, right? And I've seen this is interesting. This is something I learned really quickly from my co-founder. What I was doing when we first started, we would have like 100 visitors a month on our website. And you know the funnel of 100 people come to your website, time to register, to pay. And I was sitting there focusing on that 2, and I was like, how do I make that 2 become 3, right? And I kept spending hours and hours and hours. And my co-founder said, stop doing that. What you got to do is you got to make that 100 a million. And once you get that million come to your website, and that million becomes 10,000 registrations and 1,000 payments, something like that, then you could focus on making 1,000, 2,000, because the impact is not large enough. And that's something that took a while for me to change my mindset around. And I see this all the time where people are so focused on that one number at the bottom of the funnel that they completely ignore the top, which is you have to expand and get more people to even know you exist because you have no brand awareness. Nobody knows who you are.
Dan, we're done. We just got our money's worth. That was the most amazing piece of advice I got. Thanks, guys. See you next week. So, Dan, talk to us a little bit about the background of NutriSense. What was the brainchild behind NutriSense?
Yeah, so I was working in healthcare consulting. And in healthcare consulting, my job was to optimize profitability for insurance companies, medical device companies, as well as hospitals. And I saw this continuous trend of people just, you know, diabetes and heart disease becoming bigger and bigger issues in the U.S. And U.S. kept spending more money per capita on folks, and yet people were not getting healthier, right? And these are all just lifestyle decisions that were negatively impacting people. And so at one point I was at a healthcare conference in San Francisco in Silicon Valley. I ran into one of my friends, and he was wearing a continuous glucose monitor, and he said, hey, you ever try one of these? And I was like, yeah, I actually know a lot about these. And I said, are you type 1 diabetic now? He said, I'm not. How do you know about that? And I was like, my sister's also type 1 diabetic, so I've seen these progression of these devices historically from when they used to basically not exist to they showed up, and then they slowly improved technology. And he basically said, so like, how much do you know about it? I said, kind of like a global expert in these things, both from the healthcare side as well as technology side. And he's like, hey, I'm thinking about using this as a way to help people understand their health. And my answer to him was, wow, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Why would anyone wear this as not a diabetic? That makes no sense. And he said, really, why don't you try it? I went home then and I got one for my sister, put it on. And even though I was around this technology for literally 2 decades, I never understood. And I just tried it. And it changed the way I started to think about nutrition. There are things that I thought were healthy for me became unhealthy. For example, every morning I would say, okay, I need a banana, or a smoothie with orange juice, right, or something like that. These things were just making my blood sugar go so high that I was basically like almost like high in sugar for 2 hours and then crashing. And I was having these crashes in nutrition by 2 p.m. And I just felt like I needed more food instead of having a glucose control that's pretty stable. And then so I went back to him and I said, yeah, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Let's do something here. 2 weeks later, we quit our job. Well, I quit my job. He was not this point, he was already semi-retired. He sold another company in UberX for child delivery, babysitting, basically like that. Basically, it was some babysitters, nurses, child caretakers, take care of parents, kids at different houses. So he said, okay, I'm going to build and you figure out how to sell this online. And I see, because his background's engineering. So he started building the software on top of the actual hardware device. And I looked at him and I said, well, I don't know how to sell. My background's finance strategy. How does this work? And he said, well, what the hell are you going to do then? When you start a company, there's only either you create a product, a service, an offering, something, or somebody else sells it. So if you're not selling, I'm building, what are you doing? And so my job was to figure out how to actually sell this thing. And so first I did was just Google how to sell product online because my budget is zero, right? And it was just like Facebook ads, Google ads, Instagram ads, Twitter ads, Pinterest ads, SEO. And one of the things was marketing influencers. So I just said, okay, well, since I don't have that much money to go spend on Facebook, Google ads, I don't know how they work. What's the easier one? So I started reaching out to influencers in the health and wellness space. Reached out to about 1,000. Like just DM'd them, no response. Finally, one person's like, okay, I'm intrigued. Shipped to their house. They tried it. They liked it. They posted about it. And we got some sales. And then I was like, all right, well, let's see what worked and what didn't work in the entire strategy and just try to replicate that. And next time I reached out, only maybe like 50 before one responded. And just kept trying to figure out how to fine tune the process and then to get better and better at it. And for context, now we do about 300 a month that work, 300 influencers a month work with us.
Wow.
So we went from 1 out of 1,000 to like 300 a month. We have full-time people working with influencers all day now. And so as we got that program going, I said, okay, what's next? Facebook ads, Google ads. And I went to that, did that for a little bit and hired someone to do that. And I just kept constantly just picking an area, doing it a little bit, getting okay at it, and then finding someone better than me to take over that position and then scaling the business that way.
So Dan, how is NutriSense going to make the entire American population healthier?
Yeah, so this device has been historically used by type 1 diabetics. What we did is we built software on top of it, which helps people track their nutrition, their stress, their workouts, for women, the menstrual cycle. And we analyze that data and we spit back out to you in real time. How does your body respond to those events in your life? So when you eat a banana or you eat an ice cream, how did your glucose get impacted specifically to you? And we all know that we're all unique. Our microbiome is unique, our genetics, our age, our sex. And so we have completely different responses. So there's a lot of things we could be eating that we don't even know is good or bad for you until we try this out. So by some awareness, like people change their entire habits because a lot of times they go to the doctor and the doctor will say, hey, it looks like you're pre-diabetic. And you ask the doctor, what do I do? And they go, exercise and eat better. What the heck does exercise and eat better mean? Right. And then you come back a year later and sometimes they say, you've improved. What you do? And you're like, I don't know. Or you came back and it's worse. And they're like, you're still not eating better. And you're like, I am eating better. And you see these trends where like people always say, like, no, the vegan diet's the best. Some people say, no, the keto diet's the best. Some people say the paleo, the carnivore. And the answer is really the best for who? We're also unique. What's good for you might not be good for me. And this helps answer the question of what is good for you, not for someone else. And on top of that, we give you a dietitian. And so the dietitian is constantly checking your data in real time as well to help you really figure out and fine tune. Because we don't want to just give you the what, we want to give you how to improve it, right? Because you might say like, this is bad for you, but okay, what do I swap it out with? And another human person there helping you as an expert to try and understand that and triangulate that information is really impactful. And it's also accountability, right? A lot of times, this is what people say when you go work out with with someone else, you're more accountable. We don't always have the willpower, especially I know you guys work hard, and a lot of you listeners work really, really hard. And there's only so much willpower we have every single day to keep going. So after you've had a stressful day at work, do you really want to go do another thing? And just having someone keep you accountable puts it to the next level because it's the place between willpower and before it becomes a habit. they really step in that place. They say that 21 days is really what it takes to become a habit of doing something. And this person keeps you and pushing you to do the same thing. So you get in that one, learn and then change and then make it a habit.
Dan, by using your metrics, an individual can obviously alter their conduct.
Yep.
Have you found anything on the macro level? You're analyzing tens of thousands of biologies.
Yeah.
Are you noticing trends
Yeah.
from a macro level in America?
Yeah. Macro, micro. I think in a macro, what's interesting, by the way, I'll tell you one fact, which is I think fascinating. People always talk about intermittent fasting and how it's incredible for you. We've actually seen that it is good for you unless you're a woman. Once you start looking at gender differences and you start seeing women fasting over 24 hours, you immediately have we've seen like 60, 70% of women actually have negative response to fasting because the cortisol increase, the stress response is so high that they're actually having more negative from it than positive. For men, all positive mostly, like 99%, but for women, it's not. And all the research, like, oh, look how great it is, look how great it is. But people completely forget to segment women versus men. And our physiology is so different. It's fascinating. So that's the one thing I think it's unique. But there are some other parts that are macro. In general, you want to stop eating food before 3 hours before bed. That is a macro trend. If you eat food, like anything, doesn't matter if it's healthy or not, before bed, you will sleep worse. Next day, you will wake up worse. Your glucose will be worse. It's like anything else. Just like when you work out, let's say, and you work out a certain muscle, you don't want to work it out every day nonstop. You need a break between. Same with this. Your body needs to metabolize that food. It needs to rest and digest. And your body, your body's just like the whole thing's a muscle, really. So you need to give it a rest. And if you're just going and eating right before bed, it's never actually taking a break. So not eating within 3-hour window of sleep is a very big thing for everyone across the board.
Dan, how do your revenue streams work? Is it subscriptions or is it sale of the hardware?
So it's what we really do is we send you a subscription. You get these devices only last 14 days each. So you may sign up for, let's say, 6 months, and you will order basically 6 months worth of plans, and we send you 2 devices a month. We give you the software on top of it and a dietitian as well. And basically, you pay us a monthly basis. You could pause whenever you want to take a break, for example. You might be going on vacation or something like that. And when you're done, you come back on.
Dan, I'm curious, your revenue streams, do you have a way of distinguishing it between patients or prospects that have a health need that they want to strategically cure rather than those that are just seeking a healthy lifestyle?
Sure. Yes. So these devices actually require medical prescription. So we write medical prescriptions in all 50 states digitally. And when people give us a reason why they're signing up, they have to tell us the reason. So someone might say, actually, here to lose weight. Some might say I'm pre-diabetic. Some might say I'm training for the Olympics. And we've seen a spectrum across everything from type 2 diabetics to Olympic athletes using this product. And what happens is once we find that reason, we actually pair them specifically with a person who's an expert in that area. And I think that's been very effective for us. It also helps us understand dynamics. People in certain backgrounds and health conditions, they use the software very differently. And so we try to personalize the experience for that individual.
Let me ask you this, Dan. I love the product. It's amazing. But let's talk about the company a little bit more, right? Because you guys started right before the pandemic. So you guys were bootstrapping it. I mean, today you have $150 million valuation, right? But it didn't start that way. So a lot of people that are listening to this podcast may be smaller businesses that are looking to get some type of funding in the future, but they don't know how to go about and getting it. And they may be saying, you know what? Oh, these guys have $150 million valuation. They're venture backed. It's easy for them to go out there, burn and spend money to get, new clients. But let's talk about the beginning and how you made the pivot from being a small business into being a venture-backed company.
Yeah, so it's funny. When we started, we basically said, oh, hey, we're going to be venture-backed business. This is how we're going to build our company. And we started the company 3 months before the pandemic. So we started building, started growing. And then as we started finally talking to venture capital firms, pandemic hits. And everyone's like, sorry, time out. Let's reconnect 9 months from now. And our question was, do we go back to, do I go back to consulting? I had a nice job, flying around the world, hanging out, having dinners with nice restaurants, or do I keep going with this? And we just said, let's keep doing it. And we basically said, like, what's the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario was we learn a lot more, things don't work out, and we get more experience, we become better. But the one thing that happened, and I think this is the key differentiator, and I didn't understand this before, was how much more important it became to really look for what I call A players and be very sophisticated in your interview process and your recruiting process of really having the right people on the team, on the bus, I call it. The mistake I made earlier was, oh, they're decent at their job. They'll help us because I'm busy. So somebody's okay at their job. They'll just come and take over. And that's good enough because it's not me doing it. And that now all of a sudden we had less money. And I was like, okay, how do I get someone who's actually not just good enough, but incredible? Because I can't hire 3 people. I can only hire 1 person now. And when I made that differentiation, it really skyrocketed our business because the one thing people forget is people who are like the top tier players, they're equivalent to like 10 people. And you don't realize it until you have those people on your team. It's the incredible amount impact they have is just, it's unstoppable, right? Like, and since then we've made a conscious effort to be significantly more specific in our job descriptions, our interview process. We give everyone a job interview, which is exactly what they're gonna be doing. And actually also help the person think, do I like this? Because if the person doesn't like the interview process, they're gonna hate the job. And so everyone that interviews with us and they start with us, they actually most times kind of have the attitude when they start, they're like, hell yeah, or F no. And we used to often talk about this, but we on purpose during the interview process explain our values and we tell them the bad and the good, you know. And I'll tell you some of these things. Like for example, we value extreme transparency. But when I say extreme transparency, I mean like any moment in time, any employee can know how much money we have in the bank, how much money we make, how much money we lose, who we're gonna hire, how they're doing his performance, right? Like, and that some people love that because they know exactly everything. Other people are like, whoa, I don't want to be lied to. You know, I want you to handhold me, and I want to be a place where I can just hang out. And so it takes very different kind of people. We don't believe an idea of that everyone needs to be managed. We think good people want the freedom to create and build, and we trust those people. But again, I think people always say like, hey, I don't want to be managed. I want to be freedom. Well, what really happens is what they mean by that is a lot of people is they don't be micromanaged. And the moment someone goes from micromanage, there's like micromanage, manage, and then there's a complete autonomy. The moment we go from micromanage, we let it be autonomous. People actually a lot of times freak out and they're like, wait, what do I do? How do I do this? I've never done this before. And most people don't want autonomy. They just don't want to be micromanaged. And people confuse that term very often. Yep.
Dan, I get hiring A players and I get hiring people that fit in with the company's culture and the company's core values, so to speak. Core values are huge, and you guys are doing this since day one, since you're hiring. What I don't get, maybe you could help me out here, is how do you hire for a role, an A player, or what you assume to be an A player, that you've never done before in your life? Like you said, you're a finance guy. Your partner is an engineer. How the hell do we know this chief marketing officer is worth his weight?
Yeah, so I've done it in 2-step process, which I actually recommend for everyone to try. So the way I look at it is, 1, it's for me to understand the topic, and 2 is pull in someone else. So I will say, let's say I pick Facebook ads and I want to hire someone for Facebook ad marketing, right? It's one topic. I will basically go and say, next 30 days, I'm going to dedicate my life to learning Facebook ads. And that includes 3 parts. 1, I will listen to every freaking possible podcast, YouTube video, every single thing possible. I will read as many books as I can about it, and I will go do it. And I will just do that for 30 days. That's number 1. And number 2 is I also find someone who's about 2 years ahead of me in that area. The reason I say 2 years, because if you go too far out, things have changed dramatically in that field, and it's too much of a difference. So what I do then is, after I do it for a month, when I start interviewing people, I have a feeling of what goes wrong, goes right. And that person needs to be at least twice as good as me. Because if I've been doing it for 1 month and that person's been doing it for 5 years, they better be at least twice as good as me. And you'll be amazed how often they're much worse than me, which I'm always amazed by.
Oh, it doesn't amaze me at all.
And so twice good. And the second thing is, I always bring, when I get to the final round, I always bring someone who is the expert, and I have them at the last step just do like a confirmation, like, hey, this is 1 or 2 people that I want to hire. Which one do you think? And then they'll just look at them and kind of give me feedback or talk to them. I want to be respectful of these people's times, because these mentors I find are very busy. So I can't be like, hey, screen 100 resumes. But if you just say, hey, I just need you to look and talk to 2 people for 30 minutes or 15 minutes, it's being respectful of their time, but also very valuable to see if I miss anything. And so that's the 2-parter I do. do the job, make sure they're better than me, and then have that person at the end
I
confirm.
love that because you guys are strategically hiring for the position. I think a lot of small business owners, especially when they're first starting out, is they're hiring more generalists and trying to make them fit the seat,
Yep.
right? Rather than hiring more people that excel in that seat.
Well, it's interesting you say that. When you're starting, you want generalists, right? They say companies are started by generalists, but scaled by specialists, right? So you want to hire generalists. But the thing was, I became a generalist, so we didn't need any more generalists. But even with generalists, I think with generalists, you really test for intelligence. So I'll give you context. We were looking for human resource people. Our first human resource person, I was like, yeah, never thought I'd have to hire one of those, but apparently that's what happens at a certain level. And I could not find anyone that I was intrigued by. And we had a guy who applied who was a finance guy. Like he had zero experience as HR person, and he emailed us saying, "Hey, I know I have zero experience, but I really want to try this. Can you take a chance on me?" And so the test I gave him had nothing to do with HR. I just gave him a really difficult engineering test that we give our engineers. And I said, spend as much time as you want on it and see what happens. And he came back and he basically did the test as well as any engineer without ever being an engineer. And to me, it showed that he was willing to learn something completely different than his entire job. And it just showed aptitude and intelligence as well as grit, because he went and figured something out. Like he basically had to learn Python and write a Python program. Had nothing to do with his job. But if you're willing to do that, like you could probably learn HR, right? And so we basically said, like, let's test for intelligence when it comes to generalist roles.
Dan, let's touch upon the word that you just said, grit. The life of a business owner, entrepreneur, and especially in a startup like yours, is filled with challenges, failures, trials, and tribulations. So every day you're at that fork in the road, and you can make the right decision, you make the wrong decision.
Yep.
Expand a little bit upon this quality. Is it innate or can it be learned? Grit.
So I think one thing that's important is to break down decisions into two types of decisions, whether they're reversible decisions or non-reversible. Hey, if I buy this hat for my company with a logo and it turns out to be an ugly hat, who cares? Like, it's fine. Okay, you spent $1,000, you can live with it. Whether, oh, I opened a new, like a second location, let's say if I'm a restaurant owner, and all of a sudden I'm stuck for 10 years, that's not really a reversible decision. So if it's reversible decisions, make them as fast as possible. Don't think about it. Act. Key is to act. Don't spend too much time, and then adjust. If it's not a reversible decision where you're stuck with it, then really think about it in detail and decide how you want to do it. But in regard to, so that's, I think, the first step. And then second step about, you said, is grit innate? Is it like native to people or not? Is it natural? I don't have the answer to that. I do think part of it could be learned. And I think a part of that could be learned is by actually failing. I force people on our team to fail, where, especially when I know it's a reversible decision. So whenever people bring up ideas and I know they're just not going to work out, but they're really confident about them, I ask them to explain to me why they're confident, and they give their logic, and usually logic works, and strong logic. And I realize it's okay. Decision's going to cost us $500. I actually tell them, go do it, knowing they're going to fail because it's just small cost to pay. And when they fail, then they come back. I ask them, like, why did you fail? And we talk through it. So I try to force this upon them. If it's a big decision, I actually explain them, like, hey, let's not do it because ABC.
Dan, tell us about the grit it took from an immigrant young man from Ukraine.
Yep.
Come here and, new language, new culture, new realities. You have to have a little bit of grit. And
a little bit.
Innate intelligence, man. Look, you're a graduate of University of Illinois of Chicago. You went to KPMG. You're an overachiever.
Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of I don't know if it's good or not, like obsessive personality where I obsess with topics.
I think it's called a chip on your shoulder. That's good.
Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I mean, it's possible. It's funny. So I think this is on a personal setting. Like I've traveled to like 103 countries in my life. And somebody wants to ask me, like, why'd you travel to so many countries? And I told someone, like, I really wanted to study abroad, but I could never afford it. And so I've just been traveling, and I would pick jobs that would let me travel. Like I would pick jobs like, oh, I had this one job that paid, let's say 50% more, but it was in like Chicago. Another job was like, you can go live in Colombia, in France, in Germany, we'll pay for it. And I was like, okay, I'll do that job. And I just like did an excess amount traveling purely because of this, and maybe it is the chip on his shoulder, right? Should have studied abroad, wouldn't have this issue.
Out of the 103 countries, where's your favorite?
It depends for what, right? I think at a certain level, you start differentiating between, kind of like I said, you got a segment between like food, culture, relaxation, right? I think when it comes to food, I think Peru is probably got my favorite food. It's a very mixed Latin and Asian. It's like kind of like Mexican and Japanese together. Funny enough, people don't realize, but they have a huge Japanese population in Peru. Their president right now, his parents are both Japanese. So it's got this very interesting mix of like seafood, raw seafood with a lot of Mexican spices. So Japanese, basically that's my favorite part from the food perspective. I think in the same time, Japan, I think, was one of the most interesting countries from culture. US, I love US, but we've significantly impacted most of the world from McDonald's, Burger King, Starbucks, everywhere you go. One of the things Japan did interestingly well is they resisted a lot of outside impact, which is good and bad, right? But what makes it interesting is like when you go there, it feels like a different world. You can go to France and you see Eiffel Tower, but then you got your McDonald's, or you can speak English to someone and everyone understands you, and you kind of feel home. You got the Marriott, the Hiltons.
You mean we can't get an American continental breakfast at the Marriott Tokyo?
That's the thing. I'm not even sure how many American. I don't know if they even have a Marriott Tokyo. To be honest with you, I stayed at some local. Like I slept on the floor. Like some of the top restaurants have the mats on the floor, like the old school. They give you the samurai outfit on, and basically you're getting real, Japanese lifestyle. And
full immersion.
We had Terry Jones, who is he was the founder of Kayak. He's the chairman of Travelocity on a couple shows ago, and he made a great point. He goes, the rest of the world refers to America as generica, right? Because everywhere you go, it's the same restaurants, the same hotels. Yeah. We're losing that little bit of culture that we had. Like, it's really hard to find, but you can still find it in pockets like New York City, Miami, right? But even those cool little places are starting to scale too, and they're popping up everywhere. So
yeah, I mean, I will say America, in my mind, still the greatest country in the world.
100%.
People always bring up statistic like we're like, oh, it's hard to become a millionaire in US, right? And they give you examples, and I can't, and don't quote me exact numbers, but it's true. It's much harder than it was. But if you look at statistically, like if you look at Asia or Europe, something like 90 or 95% of people who are millionaires are people who were millionaires because of their inheritance, their family millionaires. In the US, it's like 65% people are millionaires, right? Because of their family. That still leaves 35%, which is an incredible number. Like, yeah, not everyone can become, millionaire immediately, but it's the fact that it's the opportunity you're given. It's a bigger population of opportunities. And I don't know any other place in the world gives you that.
100% agree with you. Let me ask you this though, Dan, since we're on the topic of numbers, your company really went from a $0 to $150 million valuation.
Yep.
Can you give me 3 top things that you guys think you did very well in order for that to happen? Because that is a huge number, my friends. I'm extremely impressed with you, and congratulations.
I appreciate it. 3 is harder. I can give you 2, and I'm sure they'll think more as we think about it. So the one thing here is for it to grow, it has to compound every single month, right? When you go from like, hey, it's 10, now it's 20, it's 30, it doesn't sound like that much. But if you look at compounding, I think Einstein said that compounding is is incredible. I forgot the exact quote. Do you guys remember?
The eighth wonder of the world.
Eighth wonder of the world, right? So if you're compounding, you're like, hey, you set goals like I'm gonna grow 20% month over month, and that's really you set up the one North Star metric, which is we put revenue as the North Star metric, and we said, and we would set it every single month for the next 3 rolling months, and we would always set that number, and everyone in the team, everyone in the company would say that's a number we need to hit. And when you do it like that, it becomes much more realistic, much more attainable. When you say something like, I'm going to grow 800% in the next 5 years, like for regular persons who's doing customer support, what does that mean? How do I impact that? But when you say our goal is to grow 20% this month, and every single week you're like, oh, we're up 7%, we're up 12%, we're up 19%. Everyone feels the impact. And so everyone's in the same boat, and everyone feels, hey, if I made that extra sale, hey, if I've recovered a customer who's going to be pissed and is quitting, I got him to stay a little longer, and they're seeing that, right? And you're actually explaining like, to grow 20%, you got to generate 100,000 more in revenue. And now you're saying now it's 20,000, 30, and you see people are seeing the actual numbers, and they're more concrete. Everyone feels like they're part of the game and they're part of it. And so That's been very impactful. Just go month by month versus say there's long-term goals. And by doing that, again, you go 20% month over month for 2 years. That compounds really quickly, right?
Attainable and excitable.
Exactly.
Right?
Another thing we did is we gave majority people in our company equity, majority of the company. So even though we're paying the same as everyone else, we said, okay, you might not get a lot, you might get 0.01%, but we gave everyone. And by the way, some people got like 2-3%. And again, like when they see like, hey, I'm putting more work and equity's growing in value, I care a lot more. And you see this where you might have a dietitian tell you what's wrong with the website, or they might tell you they saw the Facebook ad that had a spelling on it, or they might tell you, hey, I found another influencer that I met at a restaurant, or hey, somebody asked me about the CGM and I convinced them to sign up on the spot. Because everyone realizes, because usually if you have a salary, like your salary is pretty stagnant, right? And it is what it is. You get paid and you might get your 3% increase at the end of the year usually. But here, as the company grows, your value grows, right? And the idea is that people just care more because in the end, the goal is for them to make more money in equity than it is in salary. And I think we are always also afraid we're like, oh no, but if I give it away, it's my baby, I own it. How do I keep it to myself? If you're a small business owner and you give away 1%, 2% of $1 billion because you grew a huge empire over time, that's worth way more to you than if you kept 100% of a small $1 million empire, right? So I think people should always remember you can get bigger and share more of the wealth of more people, and having something of a larger number is better than having everything of a smaller number.
I couldn't agree more. Let me ask you one more question though. When you guys set out to found the company,
Yep.
right? Did you have an exit when you're starting out? Did you have an exit plan? Where you guys want to be? How to exit?
So we'd like to IPO.
Okay.
So when I say that, for anyone not know what that means, take initial public offering. Our goal is to become a $5 billion company. But really, our goal is less so about the valuation or the money. It's more so about how many members we can help. And so we'd like to help millions of people around the world. Right now, we're only in the US, but that's the mission. It gets very exciting to do something and actually feel good about it. I'll tell you, I was talking to someone. This is the first time in my life where I can't wait till Monday. Like, I did not have that experience. Any job I've had jobs that were awesome, like literally consulting. I would travel around the world in just first class, and they would go to nice dinners with CEOs and like try to convince them to sign up for projects. And I still didn't have that excitement where I'm like, I can't wait. Like I'm the first one to get started on Monday because I'm like, we're building something, and every single day we have the Slack channel. Every day we get hundreds of people who are like, you changed my life. And it goes from extremes where it touches everyone. Someone would be like, we had someone who used a product who set an Olympic record, and they were like, I think this impacted me. It's that extra little edge. And someone else said, I was type 2 diabetic for 10 years and I reversed in 3 months with you guys. And that kind of stories we have in our Slack channel coming through every day, hundreds of those stories, they really inspire you. And they make you feel like if you're working 16-hour day, you're doing it for something. It's a bigger purpose, right? And that's also very motivating. I sometimes look at other tech companies and like I have friends that worked in awesome companies that are successful, like let's say Uber. They were super successful. But a lot of people that were more apathetic. They're like, cool, we sent 50,000 cars, now we send 100,000 cars, now we send 200,000 cars. But like, it's great. I love Uber. It's one of the apps I use all the time. But like, you're not like changing people's lives every single day. And so it's harder to like put in those grinding hours. There, you're mostly doing it for money. Here, you're doing it because you feel good and you wake up every day and like you feel like you've accomplished something with your life.
It's amazing. I love that. Dan, let me ask you this. Give us a little something that we should expect out of NutriSense moving forward. What's 2.0 look like?
Yeah. Our goal is to expand vertically and horizontally. So we look at health in 5 pillars: nutrition, stress, fitness, sleep, as well as a community. When I say community, I think we also saw the loneliness come out of people during COVID. And so our ambition is to expand across all those spaces, whether it's to work with partners or whether build out the capability ourselves. That's number one. And number two is, when I was saying horizontal and vertically, the number two is add more sensor technologies. There are more sensor technologies that are going to come out to the market that I've tested that track your lactic acid in real time, that track your ketones in real time, that track your cortisol in real time. They're still pre-FDA approval and they're still in the early stages, but having that data will just make things so much more effective. I mean, think about this. Right now, we go to the gym or we go for a run or something, and we get tired. We're like, I think I'm done. Like, how do you know you're actually done? If you can find that out, then you basically are able to then say, okay, this is the moment I need to stop. Otherwise, you either sometimes overwork yourself, and then that's bad, or you underwork yourself. But if you know exact moment you're done, and this is the most efficient way to do workout, you become way better human beings from around our health.
Dan, you've been awesome, man. I really appreciate you being on. I know the audience, myself and Luigi, we learned a lot from you, and I'm sure we're going to have some more questions. So we're going to hit you up another time to get you back on the show. Hopefully your valuation will be double, if not triple by then. I definitely believe in you guys. But I do have a question. I have a question for you before I let you, right? And it really doesn't really have to do with business. It's more personal. And we ask everybody else on the show, what does success look like to you?
Yeah, it's I think to me success is really twofold. I think it's success of freedom. Really what I'm doing, and I don't know how everyone looks at it differently. Everyone's got like this enormous money they need to make or whatever it is. To me, it's the ability to wake up when I want, to do things I like to do, to build stuff I want to do. So like right now, we pay ourselves salary as well. It is significantly less than I made as management consultant, significantly less. But I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Like I get to do every day, I get to decide what I'm going to work on. Today I'm on your podcast. Like I got to choose that before somebody chose that for me. And to me, that's one success metric. The second one is I've noticed, and it's funny, my dad always said when I was younger, he's like, when you're old, if you have 2 friends, you have a lot of friends. Right. And I use that metric of like, do I have more than 2 friends? And I'm seeing this now as we're getting older. My friends are getting married and everyone moves away. And I'm always counting, like, how many people do I still? How many people do I still have more than 2? So my goal is to be my dad's expectations. Because I think in the end, friendships are so important in relationships. And I think that's a hard one to maintain. That I try to make a conscious effort to maintain that. I had a birthday dinner last week and I invited 20 people. And it's funny because I'm a finance guy. I had a 25% cancellation rate. So I booked a table for less people for like 16 or 15. And then like 35 showed up and I was like, oh boy. And so more people showed up than because I just told other people. And the restaurant was pissed. They ran out of chairs. They went to a different restaurant, brought more chairs. And I was like, all right, well, this feels good. My friends were not happy, but we're all squeezed in this room. We had to make it a standing room instead of a sitting room after a while. And I hope my friends don't listen to this because they'll be all upset with me. But that to me, it was an important metric that damn people shut up. Even people I didn't invite because I was like, oh, I don't want to, overdo it.
Dan, thanks so much, man. We want to be respectful of your time. We really appreciate you being here. Just before you run, let everybody know where they can find you on the socials and, how they can find NutriSense. We've been talking about it so much. I'm sure there's somebody that wants to reach out and see what it's all about.
Hey guys, yeah, you can go to NutriSense.io or NutriSense.com. We finally own that domain. It took us a while. We're starting a small business. NutriSense.io was like $10. NutriSense.com was like $20,000. And so it took us a while to be able to buy the NutriSense.com, but we got that one as well. But it's NutriSense.io or .com. On social, just add me on LinkedIn. Dan Zavorotny, LinkedIn, happy to answer any questions or be helpful anyway. I'm a big fan of supporting entrepreneurs. So if you ever have questions about anything, please reach out. Always want to help people.
And that's it, guys. That's a wrap of another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project.
Thank you for listening to the show. And make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of the Liquid Lunch Project.